Why
Yeah.
do you do?
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and can you believe it's only been a week, given how much news we have just packed into this thing? I think that there's some among you who are probably reaching out to Morgan Freeman and saying, can you get me one of those little rock hammers? Because I'm just going to go ahead and start picking up at the wall, and in 4 years, maybe we can finally crawl out and have our redemption. So we are joined with people in some very nice locales. That apparently is not a fake background. Bill Seikaly, attorney, broadcasting in the blind from, where's that, Cabo?
Cabo.
Okay, yeah, I recognize the trees. Attorney Joel Sklar is here. We have Republican strategist Jason Roe. We have former Detroit Free Press reporter and PR specialist Darci McConnell, labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, where to begin? I guess the word Trump has to be in the item number the item that we have. Let's go ahead and start with the tariffs. There has been a lot of threats to go ahead and impose tariffs on countries like China, as well as Canada and Mexico. And yet at the same time, it seems as though there has been a pullback. And there he is. He has made it. The third of our lawyers, Steve Fishman. The whole idea that it seems as though there is a kind of tug of war going on in Donald Trump's toupee of whether or not to actually deploy the tariffs or not. It seems as though he's pulled back on it. Is this I guess this is a rhetorical question in part. Is this a game? But what are the consequences of this kind of tariff rhetoric with both our allies and our adversaries? Jason?
Well, listen, I don't think it's an abandonment by Republicans of free trade. I mean, it's been a hallmark of conservative thought for some time. And I think it's a place that Republicans and Democrats, going back to the Clinton years, have been largely aligned on. It doesn't mean there haven't been tariffs used by different administrations, Republican and Democrat, over the years. I do see them more as a negotiating tool for Trump than a change in the Republican view on trade. And, I think one of the things that we watched happen when last week, or I guess was it this week? I mean, the 2.5 weeks we've been in have seemed like months. In the morning, the stock market was down 500-600 points, whatever the number was. Sheinbaum in Mexico was posturing. Trudeau in Canada was posturing, and by the end of the day, there was some, optic of an agreement and a pullback from Trump, as well as some commitments made by those two countries. So I just see it him trying to use it as a negotiating tool, and so the impact of a tariff we don't know yet. No one's felt that yet. Right now. It's just been the rhetoric and the threats of it, rather than the actual imposing of it, and what that result is. So I think a lot remains to be seen on that.
Well, the one thing that has come about from it,
China.
They haven't imposed on
China.
Yeah.
But we
haven't really seen the impact to our economy, the cost of goods. I mean, it's too early to know. And for all we know, we're going to wake up Monday and China's going to have some kind of a deal and a pullback on it. We just don't know. I mean, we can theorize on all this and we can hyperventilate about it, but we don't really know until the things actually are implemented.
Well, one thing that the Trump administration did do is that they suspended the use of the U.S. Postal Service to dispatch anything that had been imported from China. So a lot of people's Temu and other purchases have been languishing and sitting in warehouses. But the other thing, though, Jason, that you mentioned is that, okay, maybe conservatives and Republicans are still pro-free trade. But there's another aspect I think that's happening here, and that is the impact on the stock market. You said that the stock market is going up, it's going down. And of course, as we know, people who have an inside track can trade on this and make a whole lot of money with the volatility of the stock market. Do you think that's part of the calculus going on here?
For him to manipulate the market so that people can manipulate the prop, I don't think that's what's driving it. Obviously it's a byproduct of it, but I don't think that's a motivation.
Okay. Anyone else? I mean, Darci, what do you think about all of the volatility?
Well, I think it's only been paused for 30 days, potentially, with Mexico and Canada. And some of the leveraging was deals that, for Canada in particular, I guess in terms of border security, those promises were already made under Biden. So that he didn't really gain anything new with Canada there. They've already promised their own retaliatory tariffs. And every story about the impact on Michigan says our state would be impacted the most because of the autos, because of agriculture. So the domino effects is going to be severe. And I think we're already in a scarier time. And so I can't imagine people's bottom lines being impacted further. But I think
I've decided to prepare, and I'm switching from maple syrup to ketchup on my pancakes because there's going to be a run on this. So we have other areas where economic. Oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Well, you're muted, Bill.
You're on mute, Bill.
Can you unmute, Bill?
There we go. Sorry about that. I just want to follow up on something that Jason said, because I agree with it. Anytime, Jason, today I can find something I agree with you on, I'm going to say it.
I appreciate that.
Choice, but I think I agree that Republicans and Democrats still support free trade. That's not the issue. It's what Trump says, because what we have seen is that the Republicans have no ability to stand up to Trump. It's not a question of loyalty to Trump, it's fealty to Trump. They will come in and go lockstep with whatever he says or he does. I give you Bill Cassidy, a doctor, a physician who questioned Robert Kennedy during his nomination hearing and clearly does not support him, but yet voted him out of committee because Trump told him to. So we can talk about what Democrats and Republicans have done, but Republicans have set all that aside. And they are doing, and will, at least for this foreseeable future, I think, continue to do. I don't think, by way of example, and I think we'll get to this, I don't think that the Republicans really support the idea that Elon Musk have access to all branches or all the administrative entities in the country and go in and get all this confidential information and have these young kids hacking away. I don't think the Republican Congress generally, as individuals, support that. But they're not doing anything.
In the spirit of agreeing, I agree with you.
To stop it. They're not doing anything to stop it. Not a damn thing. And they have an obligation. They are an independent, co-equal branch of government, and they're putting aside all of that and abandoning their constitutional duties.
Don't primary me, bro. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Well, lest the show turn into the Bizarro World episode of the week that was, where everybody of you is agreeing with Jason. Let's move on.
No.
Yeah. Oh, Barb. Okay. Thank you, Barb, for bringing it back.
Good
Go ahead.
God.
I thought you had something that you were going to disagree with.
This is not about what's going on. Just strikes me as the biggest smoke screen in the world.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is we're all going, look over here, and our government is being dismantled by people. They're not even inept. They are there to smash everything that we have. You put Robert Kennedy Jr. in charge of Health and Human Services. You put Tulsi Gabbard, who was probably a Russian asset. You all these people, and they have no intention of doing their jobs. And the Republicans are in line voting And any Democrat, I mean, I think that John Fetterman is the most shameful human being in the United States, and bending over and backing down the way he is. You know, tariffs, prices have already gone up since Trump took office in anticipation of this. Actually, eggs are about the same.
We have video on the appointment.
While Trump is demanding meritocracy in government, he's trying to fill his cabinet with a whole bunch of just real geniuses. Today, the Senate held hearings for Kash Patel, who Trump wants to lead the FBI, because of qualifications like this.
My name is Kash Patel, and I have written the first ever children's Russiagate book. It's called The Plot Against the King. It is a fantastical telling by me, the Russiagate chief investigator.
Wow. I mean, that's a great reason to not teach your kids to read.
And Barb, we also have to point out that both Alyssa Slotkin and Gary Peters voted to confirm Kristi Noem as head of Homeland Security. So, I mean, I think I've written them both every day this week, or close to every day this week, and telling them, would you just fucking grow a spine and act like a Democrat for once?
They both finally woke up.
That two of the three people that you just highlighted, Patel, RFK, and Gabbard, were recently Democratic candidates for president.
Yeah, I know, but no Democrat was fooled by them, though.
well, this whole idea about Musk really now flexing his muscles within the government. It's been reported that tonight everybody at the USAID will be furloughed or will lose their job. The entire program is being dismantled. There is some reporting that Musk went after USAID not for condom distribution in Malawi or anything like that, or quote unquote woke culture issues, but because it was USAID which was prickly about his bringing Starlink, his satellite system and telecommunication system, to Ukraine. So this is essentially a vendetta. And is this now going to be Musk settling scores all around the government?
Well, he's effectively acting as president now. I mean, I think if the more we call him President Musk and Trump something, vice president or secretary in charge of talking in front of microphones or whatever.
First lady.
First lady. The better. But I mean, it is absolutely. I am taking sleeping medication every day or every night just to get through the night without waking up at 2 a.m. with my eyes like burning a hole in the ceiling of my bedroom. I mean, who is even moving to stop this? There have been some lawsuits filed, but what if some judge issues an order and Musk basically says, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway? At that point, we have lost the American democracy. I mean, there's nobody who's going to stop him. I mean, is Kash Patel going to stop him? Who's going to stop Elon Musk?
He's under no obligation to do anything because he's not even an elected official. He's just
exactly, and he feels as though he has absolute carte blanche. I mean,
he does.
Nancy, if you want to burn a hole into the ceiling, I think the Jewish space lasers can help you with that. So,
yeah,
right. Scott, yep. Joel knows a guy. Bill.
Yeah, I really think Barb hit on something, and I'd love to hear Steve and Joel's comments on these. But never has one president ever issued so many unconstitutional executive orders at one time. And I think it's real clear he's just, to use a football analogy, flooding the zone. And I think I read the other day, and this is probably a low number now, the ACLU has already filed 550 complaints in federal court. I noticed that Trump hasn't won any of them, not a single one. And in many of them, in all the major ones, judges have issued orders stopping these clearly unconstitutional actions. But I think then that Nancy raises the right point. What happens when Trump and Musk decide to screw the courts? What are the guardrails left up? Because I think that the court is the most important one. But because of the Supreme Court decision regarding presidential immunity, the only other one up that I think can work is Congress. They have this obligation to be a co-equal branch of government. They have the obligation to consider impeachment and removal from office if necessary. No one, I don't think anyone in the country believes that's going to happen. Yet, what's going on? USAID, it was created by executive order. I think that Trump can eliminate it. But what he can't do, what he cannot do is stop the funding that Congress approved to be spent. And that's what he's doing. All of these acts clearly unconstitutional. And yet Congress sits back, Republican congressmen sit back and allow it to go on. They are the last guardrail. And I agree with Nancy. If they snub their nose at the court, that's going to be the chance. I suppose the ultimate last guardrail is, who does the Army choose to go with? Think about how far down the line we are then.
Sorry, I'm going to have to double up on those.
There is going to be an order that's a diversity administration, you know, and they're going to be significant. And the question is going to be, I think that's fair, is the judiciary's determination of what the law is, as opposed to Trump's interpretation of what the law is, going to prevail. I don't think Trump has any respect for any institution. Obviously, he doesn't respect the judiciary. He backed the judiciary with questionable people, quite frankly. You know, this is just, you know, Trump negotiates with the cudgel, right? Everything is with the hammer. And, you know, he's doing that here. He's going to do that with the courts. He's going to do that with Congress. He's going to use a cudgel. He's not going to listen. He's not going to respect. And the descent of democracy, as we knew it, you know, is just going to continue. I just don't see a stop. When you have to have an executive order recognizing white Christians as a protected class, what the fuck? I mean, that's insane.
I can't sleep because I worry about white men so much.
Right, because they're so deprived. So you know, but this is what's going on. Nobody says shit. So I think we're just going on that descent, and we're all going for the ride, and we're going to see where it ends.
Darci.
I just want to make a point again about the USAID impact on Michigan yet again, because there are a lot of farmers who pour into that program. So farmers are really going to take it on the chin both ways, between the tariffs and now the USAID being gutted.
So Darci,
there's some intelligence that we get from USAID. You know, the CIA has used USAID in foreign countries. I mean, this is right. This is far deeper than giving funds. This is intelligence. It's goodwill. It's, you know, again, the smaller we get, the less safe we are. And that's what's happening.
So this creates a paradox, Joel. I mean, on the one hand, they do good, but this whole idea that they're also serving as an intel front line, I mean, that's a little bit murky, isn't it? I mean, and this is what creates the cynicism that there are people now who are conflicted to say, well, maybe it's a good thing that for the wrong reason that USAID is going away, because it is actually creating suspicion and mistrust in places where it's being deployed.
My guess is those areas that get USAID, let's say, to fight malaria, you know, other diseases. I think the goodwill that USAID provides overcomes that cynicism. But there's no doubt that USAID is utilized, you know, for intelligence purposes. It makes sense that it would be.
But that country, Joel, that I think Trump is using, and when it comes to government re-engineering Pakistan, here you see an issue where there is polio medication that was being deployed, but no one's taking it anymore because they see it as being linked with the CIA, thanks to USAID. So, I mean, it can create epidemiological problems as well. Jason, were you just okay?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in. You know, Nancy, you know, brought up what Musk's motivation might be. My interpretation of it, and when it happened, it was a trap that the Democrats walked right into, because you know, that's the first agency that he goes after, and it, you know, right now, given where we are in the country economically, people struggling to get by, having Democrats go out and wage a war to defend exporting U.S. tax dollars to other countries is not a winnable political battle. And it was odd to me that chose this one when they've already signaled that the Department of Education is right around the corner, which is a very politically difficult one. I've done a lot of work over the years with USAID, global development. I was a consultant to the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition for 11 years. I have been to Rwanda and Tanzania and Nigeria and Liberia and seen the impact of our soft power programs in terms of trying to create political and economic stability that are in America's interest. But over on Sunday, I was texting with a few of the folks that I have worked with over the years, one a Republican, one a Democrat, both lobbyists who lobbied for USAID funding, and was asking, what do you think about all this? And what was fascinating to me is both of them, the Republican and the Democrat, very pro USAID, enjoyed this. They liked it. And one of them said, it's hard for me to match the hysteria of everybody else on this. And part of it is any of us that have worked around it have seen the bloat and the waste and a lot of the cultural stuff within. So even people that have worked in and around and are supportive see that some change needs to be there. So I don't know what it looks like when it's all done. Does USAID survive? Is it tucked into state in some other way? I don't think we're going to abandon our aid programs because they do benefit American interests from national security and economic interests. So we'll have some form. It won't look like what it looks today. But to my point, I think this was a trap the Democrats walked into, and I think it's further set them back in these fights.
But Jason, when it comes to then what's in the national security interest, there's also now a concern about whether it is primarily about in the best interest of Musk, in the best interest of Trump. I think that cynicism has sort of bled into it. For example, Trump has threatened to cut off aid for South Africa, ostensibly because of South Africa's issuance of a complaint against Israel at the International Criminal Courts for potential genocide and war crimes occurring. But we also hear Musk talking about how this is punishment for the way that South Africa has allegedly treated white people, one of them, of course, being Musk and his family itself. So, I mean, the messaging is highly problematic. And but I guess that's why he came to America, because now, thanks to Trump, it's a protected class of people. But the whole idea then that is it helpful for the rhetoric for the Republicans to be having this kind of recklessness? I mean, if there is a genuine policy issue, yeah, Bill, I'm sorry, I know you're waving feverishly.
Here's the problem. I think that we're asking the wrong question. Jason wants to pose this in terms of the Democrats walked into a trap. The Republicans are doing this. God damn it. This is a republic. Congress is supposed to be acting as an independent entity. They're not supposed to be thinking just as Democrats and Republicans. They're supposed to be thinking about what's in the best interest of this nation. And they've abandoned that responsibility. And until we start looking at that issue, as Franklin said, the great experiment is over because it doesn't exist. This was never designed to be built about Republicans walking into a Democratic trap or Democrats walking into a Republican trap. It was designed about the people electing representatives to do what was in the best interest of the country. And as far as I'm concerned, the Republicans should be ashamed of themselves. Absolutely ashamed of themselves.
They don't have any of that.
Well,
they lost that all.
I think it's clear, and I think Senator Buck Cassidy made it clear with RFK Jr., is that until people in Congress care more about America than they do about their jobs, we're in trouble. And we're just seeing time after time, we're seeing, and I hate, hate to put it all on the Republicans, but the Republicans are so fearful of their losing their jobs and being primaried and being attacked that they don't have the stomach to stand up, except for a few. Murkowski, maybe Susan Collins, maybe suddenly Mitch McConnell is a beacon of light. But we're not. The rest of them are just so fearful of their jobs that when I hear them talk on TV, I sometimes have to change the station because I know they're not going to stand up and say the right thing.
Well, what about the Democrats haven't done the same thing?
Yeah,
Steve.
I think there's more than just fear for their jobs. I'm interested in what Jason thinks of this, actually. I read articles about it, so I don't know firsthand anything, but it sure sounds like the threats against these Republican senators and representatives, I suppose, are more than just threats about their jobs. I mean, I saw somebody, and I don't remember who, saying not everybody is Mitt Romney that can afford to pay $5,000 a week or whatever he's paying regard his family. And there are, I don't know. I'm interested again in what Jason will say. If that's the truth, if there are people who are afraid for their lives or their health or their families, that's a lot more significant than they're just afraid that they won't be a senator again.
Yeah.
What do you hear about stuff like that, Jason?
I mean, there's definitely belligerence. I have not talked to any elected Republicans on the Republican side, MAGA or not, with genuine fears for their personal safety. But I do think there's something to consider. Set aside, is their motivation to keep their job? They like being a senator, whatever. But careful what you ask for, because you might not be happy with those Republicans today. But if they do the things that you want them to do at the wrong time, they're gone. And the ones that replace them are going to be much more objectionable to you than the ones that are there now. So that is part of the problem that I think the party is in and the nation is in, is that, if you do those things that you would like to see them do, they will be removed and replaced by somebody even more hostile to the things you care about than the current crowd.
I hear that, and I'm picturing Tommy Tuberville as the kind of person you're talking about, an absolute idiot who winds up being a senator. But I don't know, and I guess I have a little bit different background, as does Lengel and Joel Sklar, when you think about Germany and the Holocaust. I could hear people saying that in 1935 too, and well, it'll be worse and this and that and the other. I think at this point in time, it seems to me that maybe it'll get worse, maybe it won't. But if 15 of them defied these guys, maybe it doesn't get worse. I don't know how long you can continue to say, if you're Cassidy or any of these guys, well, God, if I'm gone, it'll be somebody worse. Because what's going on, at least the way I look at it, we haven't even talked about Trump and his Gaza comments yet, which are the most insane things I've heard, and I don't know, maybe ever. When you get to the point where they can't get a senator to say, "Oh God, it's crazy." They haven't had a senator say that on the Republican side. That, to me, we're already to the point. I'm not worried about who will replace them. If they're going to be gone, they're going to have to be gone. If they're not willing to stand up, then what difference are they from Tuberville?
Well, Steve, I don't think their motivation is that they're worried they're going to be replaced by someone. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I hear you.
Y'all's perspective.
So I mean, that's probably the worst of the worst hasn't even been confirmed yet, and that's Russell Vought, the architect of the Project 2025. And it seems as though there's no consternation among Congress members that he's literally going to take away the power of the purse, which is what Congress does, and bring it into the Office of Management and Budget. Faris Khan, no relation, with a couple of good points, reminding us that the San Jose Sharks fans cheered on the Canadian national anthem, and he actually said that the Canadian national anthem is 5 times better than that of the U.S. So
as a song.
It's a great
Guantanamo
something that we can all sing.
So Faris, just for your geography, Guantanamo's on the southern or the leeward side of the island in Cuba, just to keep you in check with that. And he also mentioned, what about the Lincoln Project? I mean, the fact that the so-called bipartisan Republicans reaching across the aisle to like-minded Democrats to then form a bulwark against both nominations, confirmations, and some of the other policies and legislation going through.
Yeah,
Joel.
I'll just, what Trump is incredible at is stamina. He just keeps going. We're tired. I'm exhausted.
Adderall's a hell of a drug.
Honestly, but he keeps going, and I give him to him. He never stops, right? He lies. Who cares? He keeps going with it, and he keeps winning with it. And he's, this is Trump. This is a post-truth world, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry,
Darci.
So I was going to say that they're like Nancy was saying about not watching the news, and Barbara says she has her stress ball. I think there was a period of malaise for, like Joel's saying, but I think people have come out of that now. We saw protests in 50 states this past week, and that was kind of like an Occupy movement. It was leaderless movement, but there were pretty significant crowds there. We've seen more and more people reaching out to Congress people, to our senators, asking them to take action. And so I think there was a period of where people were worn out and it can be overwhelming. But I think that is shifting now. So,
Jill Sheridan is correct. Vout was confirmed last night.
Oh, he was
White House budget director. Yeah, 53 to 47 party line vote.
You guys will be happy to know I worked with Russ Vogt back on the Hill 20 years ago. I used to know him very well.
Really?
What'd you think of him?
He was very much an institutionalist. He worked at the Republican Study Committee, which at the time was the conservative caucus in the House before the Freedom Fund. He served under Mike Pence when he was the chairman, and Jeb Hensarling, now a former member. But very well respected amongst House members. But I think there's maybe 20% of the House that's still there from when he was at the Republican Study Committee. But always, I think, thought he's a very quiet guy, kind of kept to himself, but very much an old school movement conservative. And so, when folks are talking about, the 2025 project and the threat, you might not like to hear this, but it was all pretty mainstream conservative thought. There was nothing novel in there that conservatives hadn't been talking about for decades. It was just packaged in a way that it became a good target for Democrats to go after in the 24 election.
Jason, is he allied like with Grover Norquist and the whole Americans for Tax Freedom? Okay, thank you. Barb.
So forced Christianity, compulsory pregnancy.
That's the compulsory pregnancy one. Where did that rear its head?
No abortion.
Forcing women to carry
pregnancy. There's a big difference between abortion rights and compulsory pregnancy.
Compulsory pregnancy, when you are not allowed to, under any reason at all, abort any child for any reason whatsoever, good or whatever you would call bad. I think the Christian nationalist part of it is the most distressing part, because this is a multicultural country. And what they did was they put it in a little book with a nice little stamp on it. And yes, this is, and this is what we've been fighting against for a long time. I wanted to point out real quickly that there is a great app you can get on your phone called 5 Calls, and you put in your zip code, and they get you your elected officials on there, and it has a list of things that you might want to talk about. So people that are not used to calling offices and kind of losing their plot a little bit when they get the answering machine, because no one's getting live people anymore. But I think that's really helping people get the word out, and calling the Congress and calling the Senate and letting them know what we need for them to do. Because I think that's what finally woke up Haley Stevens and woke up Alyssa Slotkin and woke up Gary Peters.
What's it called again?
5 calls. The number 5 and CALLS.
Not to be confused with 5 Guys.
Yeah.
Not 5 Guys, although the fries are delicious.
Well, it'll be nice to have an app that doesn't make me swipe left or right. So, Allan.
I wanted to make a reference to what Joel said a little bit ago about the exhaustion from Trump. Is that I remember in early 2017, Jon Stewart went on the Colbert Show and said, "Wait a minute, the presidency is supposed to age the president, not the people."
Well, with that, why don't we go to a quick commercial break, Allan?
All right. Quick commercial.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
We have a
All right,
question
I think
for Jason.
Yes. You know the potential dangers of the dismantling of democracy. Do you support it because you think you and your family will do better under authoritarianism?
Well, I think the jury's out on this. I mean, I understand all the hysteria and the rhetoric, and clearly the whole flood the zone's got a lot of molecules shaking around, but I don't think we really know what the real threat is. You guys certainly have your views, and I'm not going to convince you otherwise, but I'm going to wait and see before I have strong opinions on this, because I do have faith in the institutions, and I understand the frustration because don't see Congress standing up right now, but I don't think now is the time for Congress to step up if they're going to, because they're going to lose. So to me, what has always been the problem for people that are organized against Trump is fighting him before the right time to fight him. It's just like when he got elected in 2016 and you had protests against him before he even took the oath of office. It undermines legitimate criticism when you criticize on every single thing. And so I just don't think that any Republican is going to be rewarded. I don't think the institutions are yet have been stress tested on this. Congress has only been in a couple weeks. He's only been in a couple weeks. The Congress has only been in just over a month. We don't even have budget proposals from the administration or from the House. So there's a lot of shoes yet to drop, I think, before we really know what our system can withstand.
If I can bring a follow-up question, though, Jason, do you think that the idea of waiting and seeing and having that kind of patience is really reserved for those who have the ability or the luxury or the privilege to wait it out? Because the impact of policies is already being felt by a lot of Americans. So I'm just wondering, is that something of a strategy that can really be internalized by more people within society?
Well, someone show me the success that anybody has had to date. I mean, you had in 2017, the Republican, Democrat, and permanent Washington establishment united in trying to obstruct Trump and failed miserably. And he came back stronger than ever. He is the most popular Republican president in history. The numbers, the strength, the influence that he has on the base. But I mean, you can continue to do it, but I have yet to see any success from the approach so far. And again, I have faith in our institutions, and let's see what happens as this goes through the courts and the Congress. I mean, particularly the Senate. I think when we were on before, there was a disagreement about the House and the Senate or discussion about it. Senators have 6-year terms, and they'll be able to wait him out. I think you're actually going to see Trump in issuing endorsements in Senate primaries this time around. He's going to go way more MAGA than ever, not as pragmatic as he did in 2024, because if he gets behind someone that he doesn't think is sufficiently MAGA, and they get in, they're going to basically snub their nose at him because they only have to deal with him for 2 years, and they got 4 more years after that until they're up for re-election.
Are we sure about that, though? I mean, he's suggesting a third term. He's foreshadowing that if he has the support of Congress, if you have courts that are beholden to him, the unthinkable can happen.
Throws up, and you guys start building strategies around things that are rhetorical bombs just to get everyone spun out. I mean, focus on the things where you can actually impact, but spending any time talking about him going for a third term, which he threw up, once, and as much, I think, to troll the left as anything, is distracting you from the actual fight that's right in front of you.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Jason on a couple things. First of all, I think you're just wrong about how popular he really is. I'm concerned that the country really has gone toward him. The 49% popularity rate seems outrageous given his actions, but it may be that just like in 1939 Germany, people are willing to put aside their constitutional principles. But Eisenhower was more popular. Reagan was more popular.
Go look at historical polling within the Republican Party.
I didn't interrupt you. Don't do that to me, because I have some follow-up. I'm going to let you talk. And the first George Bush was more popular than Trump is. But more importantly, you suggest that we ought to wait and see. So when? Give me the benchmark of what we ought to wait and see for. Should we wait until they just decide, oh, there's a court order, we're going to just ignore it?
Yes.
What do we wait? Oh, that's what we wait for.
Well, you got to wait for the courts to even do their job and to see does this administration blow past the process. That hasn't happened yet. So you're building a strategy around something that hasn't even happened yet.
Well, let me tell you what has happened yet. He has issued clearly a series of obviously unconstitutional executive orders. And from a historical point of view, Nixon did a lot less than that. And the Republicans had enough spine to go to him and say, this ain't going to work. You got to go. But I see no evidence that the people you're relying on have the kind of spine that no matter what he does, they will vote him out. Now, maybe the people will elect enough senators with spine to do it in 2 years, if we have anything left. This isn't a constitutional crisis to you, Jason. I'm underestimating you. Never in our history has a president tried so hard to undermine our constitutional principles with these executive orders that clearly have no basis. And I don't even think you dispute that, Jason.
I don't dispute that, no. But again, the courts, I mean, we have a system with 3 branches. That third branch hasn't done their work yet. So again, you can be offended by what he's doing, and that's fine, and run around, with your hair on fire. But the courts haven't even had a chance. So why don't we wait and see what the courts do, and then how the administration and the Congress respond? That might be a week from today. But the idea that you're going to predicate your strategy on assuming that they're not going to do that, rather than letting our institutions work. But I mean, do what you want, but I don't think it's going to work.
But wait a second. I mean, there is, I think that the Supreme Court has already told us what they're going to do when they gave him absolute immunity for official acts in office. I mean, they're clearly in favor of a strong executive. They're expanding the executive powers. I don't trust this court to put a stop sign in front of Trump at all, because they haven't. I mean, they for the first time, we have a fucking king. We have somebody absolutely immune if they do anything in office. Essentially, they can have each one of us shot because we're a danger to national security. And theoretically, under the Supreme Court decision, he's off the hook. So I think we can tell where the Supreme Court's going by what they've already done.
Okay. Darcy, did you have your hand up?
I did. Bill said most of what I was going to say. I think it's amusing that Jason wants to tell Democrats and independents what to do based on who he normally works with. So thanks, but no thanks, Jason. If by being silent, we're complicit. So, lawsuits are necessary, protests are necessary, contacting our Congress people is necessary. So that doesn't mean we're running around with our hair on fire. It means that we're not passive and sitting on our hands.
Allan.
Not to mention how much damage has already been done with Musk having all the information he already has.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I think there's no time to wait to see what happens. I mean, they fired some of the, I think, 8 executives from the FBI. They're gathering thousands of names of people who worked on the January 6th case. I mean, he's undermining, and it's interesting. I've known a lot of FBI agents over time. The majority are conservative. The majority are Republicans, and I would bet the majority voted for Trump. But you have, I think, some buyer's remorse. Not only there, you have it in Dearborn and in the Arab American community when they hear him making comments about Gaza. And I think there's a lot of shit going on, and there is no time to sit back and wait to see what happens. We see he right from the get-go. I mean, he pardoned all the January 6 people, the violent people. There's a lot of shit going on. He's packed a year in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so there's no time to really sit back and just
all with a Sharpie. I mean, this guy doesn't know how to legislate. He doesn't know how to deal with people other than to beat him over the heads with a mallet. I mean, this is all being done through executive order. I mean,
but you got to admit, Nancy, I mean, that signature is really calligraphically.
Yeah, I know. I was going to see a friend of mine said I said he's done it all with a Sharpie Magnum, and she said, and it's bigger than his dick. So that's probably what I'm doing.
Well,
anyway,
Barb.
I just want to say that people right now that are relying on Social Security, their hair is not on fire, but they're damn worried. I think if you have a child that is on disability, they're terrified. If you, anybody that is reliant on these things that they paid in for, that I paid in for.
Yes,
I paid into that.
He's also Medicare and
Medicaid, and I think we've got a South African giving Nazi salutes and laughing like hell. Don't shake your head. He did.
It's not a Nazi salute. I mean, if
I throw my heart to you. I give you my heart.
Well, isn't that half of what Isn't that what half of Kate and Leo did in Titanic? Anyway,
can we move on to Gaza?
Yeah. So I mean, the bingo card of maybe we should have a separate segment on the show that I didn't think he would go there, but he did. President Trump decided how he wants to deal with Gaza by saying that the United States should come in, occupy it, raze everything that's left to the ground, displace the Gazans from their ancestral homeland, about 2 million people, and then turn it into the, quote, Riviera of the Middle East with condos and other Trump paraphernalia and merch and buildings to make it a playground. These statements were also made in the presence of indicted war criminal Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office, and seemingly in full agreement and concordance with it. And Alan, I think we've got a series of videos.
We have a few little videos.
He was also asked where the Palestinians would go and suggested that neighboring countries should take them in.
If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. I think that Gaza maybe is a demolition site right now. If you look at Gaza, it's all, I mean, there's hardly a building standing, and the ones that are going to collapse. You can't live in Gaza right now.
And if we...
You can see he's really thought this through. Every idea is worse than the last idea. He seems to believe that the reason there's conflict in Gaza is because no one thought to give them a pickleball court.
And of course she's shocked. He's effectively advocating for ethnic cleansing. Who could possibly be okay with that?
You see things others refuse to see. You say things others refuse to say. And after the jaws drop, people scratch their heads and they say, you know, he's right.
No, they usually scratch their heads and they say, what the f are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, one of those clips had the follow-up was that the person who destroyed Gaza is literally sitting next to him while he's making that. What to make of this plan and the whole idea that 150 years on from the fact that Western external forces shape the Middle East as it is with displacement and turmoil, we're taking a page out of history and deciding to do it all over again.
Grandpa is sundowning. But I think that's something that we need to leave to. I'm going to leave it to my Jewish friends here to at least weigh in first, because, you know,
and our Palestinian friend.
I'm curious about what Jason has to say about this.
I think it's ridiculous.
Why do we always want to know what Jason has to say?
Well, because listen, first of all, I'm trying to get my blood pressure back down. As a Palestinian, I could not be more offended.
Okay, go ahead.
That an American president would say such a thing is so incredibly offensive. And I have to tell you, it's one of the few live things that I watched this week, and I really wish I wouldn't have. I thought Bibi was going to drop to his knees and perform an oral sex act on Trump. It is disgusting. But listen, it's part of a plan. I mean, in case anybody wonders, you notice how they're now bombing in the West Bank. And they're going to do the West Bank what they did to Gaza. Trump will come up with the same idea. Who do you think is going to occupy if they displace 2 million Palestinians and rebuild Gaza? Who do you think they plan on living there? You think it's other Arabs? You think they're going to invite people maybe from the Ukraine? For God's sakes, they're going to turn it over to Israel. It is. We got into this jam in large part because of the English and the Balfour proposal, but leave that as let's keep on continuing to make these mistakes. But more importantly, the messages that he sends when he says things like this creates the kind of hate and animosity that creates more and more terrorism.
Yes, it really does. I mean, it sounds crazy, and it is crazy. It's insane, and he's calling for genocide, ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. But at the same time, it puts it out into the world, out of the mouth of an American president, and it gains a foothold in the public space.
Yeah.
And that to me is the real danger. But go ahead.
Alan. I find it amazing. In the last election where Trump won, the Chaldean community was very big on Trump for a multitude of reasons. One, from whatever business and whatever, but also a very anti-Muslim sentiment in that community. And when Trump started rounding up Chaldeans who had maybe 30 years ago committed assault, had a minor drug possession, the Chaldeans were like, "Oh my God, he's betrayed us." And now we're seeing all these people who are now in Dearborn and saying, "Oh my gosh, he hasn't kept his word." I mean, what the fuck? Listen to what I mean. It doesn't take that much smarts to see where he's going, no matter what he says. It's all like Kash Patel is testifying and saying, no, there'll be no retaliation. Meanwhile, he hasn't even gotten in, and the retaliation has begun. The new attorney general, same thing. Oh, no, there'll be no retaliation right away. Let's investigate the investigators and stuff like that. It's like, we know where he's going, but people don't want to believe it until they're like, "Oh my God, he's betrayed us." It's just crazy. And the thing about Gaza, I mean, it's insane. Trump says, we have to look at the history of that place. Well, the history is of occupation after occupation after occupation of every, and it doesn't work. And the idea that Americans would suddenly be like, let's colonize some more. That's a good place to restart our resurgence of colonization. I don't know what, that they have a way of twisting it too, and then suddenly saying, well, it's going to get the Arab countries involved now. Maybe they need something to light a fire under their ass. But they're constantly, nobody knew, they say a lot of his staff members had no idea he was going to make a statement about Gaza. And as Bill says, I mean, Netanyahu is like doing somersaults. Like, oh my God,
You see Susie Wiles' face when he said it. If you haven't seen that photo, it's priceless.
I think to be even more cynical, the one possibility for this is that actually the United States does occupy Gaza fairly indefinitely. People are going to see that as a victory because it's not going to be a complete and immediate annexation by Israel. But it won't really need to be, because what's really going on isn't what's happening on the land, but what's happening off the shore. One of the largest remaining and yet untapped petroleum and natural gas caches is in the Eastern Mediterranean. And the fact that the United States is going to be there and essentially setting up its little garrison, I think is not something to be underexplored, so to speak, in all of this, because it has the best of both worlds. Israel technically doesn't get Gaza, so it doesn't absorb it, but it doesn't need to, because you have a corporatist entity there, which is Gaza. So stay tuned to see how that plays a role in this.
And here's Bill sent me this, where he gave Trump a gold
a pager. It's a gold pager.
Really. So, I mean, look, what happened? I mean, you can look at it from an intelligence or warfare as a brilliant move, but people died. You don't brag about it. You don't brag about, like, look how we fucked over these people. Look how many people we killed and dismembered and all that stuff. And it becomes a joke, and it's not a joke. There's lives that are just being destroyed in that whole region.
So one last thing before we go to our last segment that I just wanted to ask is, we've got a bunch of people who are now putting their name in the hats for various races here. Garland Gilchrist, Chris Swanson, the Genesee County Sheriff, who was a darling at the Democratic National Convention with his speech, both jumping in the gubernatorial race. Abdul Al-Sayed has apparently said that he's interested in running for what will be the empty seat after Gary Peters is looking to step down. Any of these viable, and how do you think they're going to do against Duggan?
Well,
okay.
Nolan Finley said he's betting on Garland Gilchrist.
I think
Garland officially announced, because I thought he was still hemming and hawing. Did he actually announce?
No,
not yet. They're all considered, but Swanson is, I think, an interesting one, because I think he's going to appeal across the political aisle and may actually then be a viable challenger against Duggan. And a friend of mine actually said that one of the things, apparently, when they had the cold snap just recently, 13 dogs froze to death, despite the fact that there is an anti-tethering law in Metro Detroit area. Duggan won't even meet with people from rescues or for animal rights, whereas apparently Swanson has supported legislation. Won't be a panacea. Is going to help curb some of these issues and maybe enforce existing laws. I mean, so there's a lot of interest groups that are out there that see Swanson as being a new way of organizing political issues that matter to them. Darcy.
Well, I said before that I think in terms of the work that they'll put in, that Benson and Duggan are going to be hard to beat. However, I think it's unfortunate. First of all, I hope Gilchrist announces. I wish he was going for Senate actually, but he needs to hurry up and get out there if he wants to be competitive in this. I think it's unfortunate that as the lieutenant governor, he's having to battle for it. Like, pass the baton, why don't you? So,
I think that there's a reason though for that, Darcy. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I know Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist has been in my home, but I'm not sure that he knows what he wants to do. I mean, I'm not sure if he knows he wants to run for the mayor of the city of Detroit, for governor, for senator. I think that there are a lot of options, and unfortunately, I don't think he has the political machinery behind him to have gotten ahead of the curve, because he should have seen these openings. I'm not so sure he should have seen the Senate opening coming. I'm a pretty good friend of Gary Peters, and I didn't see it.
So did you have the same look on your face as Susan Wiles did in the Oval Office?
No. I was surprised by Gary's decision, but not shocked by it.
Okay, just checking.
But I think that Gilchrist has too many options and doesn't have the political machinery in place to kind of make the strategic decision and then push forward. And I do think that's too bad.
I think he needs to run against Shri Tanadar for Michigan 13. But Allan,
I agree with Bill. The money's not going to be there for Garland Gilchrist. I think the money's already lining up behind other candidates, and in the city of Detroit, Sheffield, the money is lining up behind her. Duggan's going to have money. I'm going to guess he's going to get Dan Gilbert and some of the other folks. Benson is going to have probably Stephen Ross and some other people. So Gilchrist is sort of staying on the side, and he can't even get the endorsement of his boss. I think.
Well, always remember, Gilchrist lost an election for city clerk of Detroit, of the city of Detroit, before he was plucked out of a.
But it was a close race against an incumbent. He actually was very competitive in that race.
He was very competitive. I give him that. I don't know if he's. I mean, has he carved out a identity for himself in this administration? Does he have a cause that he's pushed that would get him, that would make him something other than the tall guy who stands next to Gretchen Whitmer? I don't know.
I think he was.
He's a great guy.
I think he was inspired by like sort of being second fiddle, and I think his project is called Be Better. So
he's also one of the things I learned when I talked to him is he's a dedicated urban cyclist. I mean, he rides his bike 12 months out of the year to get around, when he lived in Detroit anyway. And he's really into public transit, and that is, public transit is one of those causes that we really should be paying more attention to. And if he decided that he's just going to go for broke as, head of course, DDOT has a new head now, the guy who was running the People Mover. But if he really pushed himself into that cause, I mean, I'd be behind him 1,000,000%.
Jason.
Wesco, I appreciate you being on and tuning into the show, but I think it'd be a little bit unfair to characterize people on the show as being Nazis. I think that there are things that some of our panelists may disagree about with Jason, but I think that I'm assuming you mean Jason. I'm assuming you don't mean Darcy in that characterization. And I mean, I think that when it comes to having dialogue and discussions and debates that we do like this, I think hopefully we provide a very civil platform, and that we may agree and disagree on these things. But I think that, first of all, ad hominem name calling is unhelpful. But also, I myself have not heard anything that anyone has said that is so ideologically out of bounds that would be characterized then in those terms. So that's my editorial. Allan.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm grateful for Jason. Jason and I have had some discussions, and we don't agree on everything, but I respect what he says, and I think he brings a lot to the table. I want to ask Jason a question about the Republican candidates for governor. Mike Rogers, who's got a shot at that end?
Well, obviously, Eric Nesbitt, the Senate Republican leader, is already in. I think he's well liked within the party. The question was, can he raise competitive money? He raised $1 million in the first 72 hours, which I think surprised a lot of people within the party that he could do that. And he's on a path to raise $2 million. It's pretty obvious that John James is going to get into the race. I think there's a high likelihood that John James could get Trump's endorsement. He also can raise a lot of money very quickly. He's got a national fundraising base. And so I think he's got to be considered the favorite. I do think Kevin Rinke, there's a good chance that Kevin Rinke could jump in the race.
Right.
On the Senate race, Mike Rogers is definitely running. Congressman Bill Huizenga from the west side of the state is taking a very serious look at the Senate race as well. But I also think that Trump could endorse Rogers. Rogers came very, very close. Out of 5.7 million votes cast, he only lost by 19,000 against a very, very formidable candidate in Alyssa Slotkin. And he was outspent 4-1 in that race. So I think starting early, getting the Trump endorsement, that might clear the field for Rogers and give him a 2-year runway as opposed to, basically a 5-month runway or 4-month runway that he had last time around with a competitive primary. So I think if it were a head-to-head, I think Republicans might struggle, but I think that Duggan's entry as an independent is very advantageous to Republicans, and not just in the governor's race, in the down ballots. One of the things that we've been up against is Democrats typically vote more straight party than Republicans. And so a lot of Democrats go in there and just cast straight ticket Dem. Now you're going to have, let's say 20-25% of Democrats who might not do that because they want to vote for Duggan. They might not vote on ballot, or they might, give Republicans a fighting chance in some of these offices to peel off some people. But I think Duggan's, candidacy as an independent gives Republicans an advantage in the gubernatorial.
Yeah, you might say.
So last thing, I'm going to call an audible before we go to our last segment, because I know people are going to wonder, and this may actually then, for some, determine whether some of our panelists, in fact, do belong to the National Socialist Party. Predictions for the Super Bowl, Jason.
I'm going with my heart. I'm just getting bored with the Kansas City Chiefs, so I'm going with the Eagles. I'm more of an NFC guy, so I'm going to go with the Eagles.
Okay, Darcy.
I can say at least right now I agree with Jason.
Okay, Steve, this is rapprochement. Joel.
Oh, I'm going with the Eagles. Yeah, I love the NFC team. They got a great defense, and Kansas City's wins game, but they do it by small margins. And I think,
but they've never been the same ever since they lost Glenn Fry. Nancy.
I'm going to go with the Eagles because I want to see what kind of song Taylor Swift writes about breaking up with
the whole team.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be called Dropped Pass, but there you go.
Barb.
I am going to be home, probably binging Gilmore Girls or something like that. I've never watched a football game in my life, and I never will.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I guess
true.
That would be an abstention. Bill.
When the Commanders beat the Lions, I decided I got to root for the Commanders. And when the Commanders lost, I wanted grit in the Super Bowl, so I rooted for the Bills. I'd like to see Philadelphia win because I'm tired of Kansas City, but I swear I think I'm going to go with Kansas City in the hopes that my streak continues.
Okay, Allan.
I'm not sure who I'm rooting for, but I think Kansas City's going to win. I am a fan of Andy Reid. I think maybe because of the State Farm commercials or whatever, Bundle Ruski. But I think Kansas City has just got the magic sauce to always just pull it out. And, we never know. I mean, look, both teams are great. The Lions were great going in, and they played horrible in their last game. We just never know. And the Washington Commanders were great against the Lions. They were horrible against Philly. So we don't know, but I have a feeling that Philly might not play as good a game as they're expected to, but that's just me.
Allan, I didn't realize you were so susceptible to ads. I mean, is there a Lady Bic somewhere in your apartment? But I can't go for a team that also has the refs. I have to go with the Eagles on this. So anyway, all right, Allan, let's go to the last segment.
All right, I'm just trying to get all these comments in here.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, Forrest going ahead and riffing on Taylor Swift there. Bravo. Darcy, who's your Schmuck of the Week?
I had lots of options, but his name has been mentioned a few times here. So I'm going to go with Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a doctor and didn't stand his ground against RFK's nomination for health secretary. He's my Schmuck of the Week.
All right. Joel.
I got two, both football related. The NFL for taking the end racism message out of the end zones. I don't know how that's offensive. And racism, it sounds like a pretty good thing to me. And also Tommy Tuberville for lying about coaching Patrick Mahomes, which he never did. Patrick Mahomes went to Texas A&M, I believe. Tuberville never coached there. So Tommy Tuberville gave a story about Patrick Mahomes and the relationship they have now. So Tommy Tuberville's an idiot and a liar. So he's a schmuck.
Yeah, I heard that because Trump is attending the Super Bowl, that apparently they're raising the goalpost to full mast again. So, okay. Jason.
Well, there's so many to choose from, both parties. I was yesterday leaning towards Interior Secretary Barbie and her ridiculous costumes through the week. But then State Representative Lori Pahutsky decided to sterilize herself for whatever reason in a state that now has constitutionally protected abortion rights. That is clearly nothing but a stunt and just is ridiculous.
Okay, in fact, I just read that today before going on. Barb.
I'm going with the Michigan Senate, who is working very hard to overturn, once again, the will of the voting people, to overturn the sick time law and the minimum wage laws. Anyone who's tried to live on these jobs is angry right now. We all got together and we voted on it. And like Republicans do, they don't care about the will of the people. They're going to do what business tells them to do. So Michigan Republicans never let me down.
All right. Bill.
My number one was Bill Cassidy, but Darcy stole it. And certainly Elon Musk and his unconstitutionally supported efforts to destroy the government of the United States is right up there. But I ultimately think it's got to go to the Republican Senate for failing to do its duty and do an independent analysis for advice and consent and having no backbone whatsoever.
Okay. Nancy.
Well, I had Bill Cassidy on my list, but Darcy stole it from me. But in the tradition of how we love to honor Judaism and Yiddish in this particular hour, I'm going to nominate the Grosse Pointe News, which allowed the word schmuck to appear in an ad incorrectly. I'm sorry, in the lead of a story. Used incorrectly. It said schmucks aren't allowed on a special committee the mayor is drafting to influence the return of Trombley School as a hub of elementary education. But it just, it's hard to raise a minion in Grosse Pointe, and I think you should be prohibited from using such a wonderful word as schmuck in a front page
It's
story
wasted.
in the
It's
local
wasted.
newspaper. It's totally wasted.
It's a Shonda.
It is a Shonda.
We had Nancy had a column she wrote about whatchamacallit from Eastern Market.
Yeah.
Said Sanford Nelson stopped being a schmuck.
It's the
And
era of the
I
schmuck.
had a prominent first person in the community who said, "Oh my God,
Accused me of
you're
anti-Semitism."
anti-Semitic." And
Yes,
said,
I know,
"Come
but I sent you that. I sent you a note about that a couple weeks ago when New York Magazine ran a story about the rise of the young new right in New York City, where these people were saying and quoting people saying, "I just want to be able to say retard and faggot again," and it's like, it's that column is still pertains. So there you go.
Okay, Alan.
As everyone else, I was going to say Bill Cassidy, but I'm going to say one Kash Patel, who had the audacity to say, "Oh no, there's not going to be any retaliation." While I'm sure he was in on the planning of what's been never seen, unprecedented retaliation against the FBI. And the other one is Cheryl Hines for ruining Curb Enthusiasm for me by standing by her man. Now I see Cheryl Hines, who was the perfect foil for me, who was
right.
a perfect wife, who rolled with everything. I had a friend in D.C. who worked at the Post and still there. He'd always say, "Why can't my wife be like Cheryl Hines?" She's like, he just rolls with it.
All right. Well, I've got two schmucks. One is Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, who announced that he's encouraging his team to focus on communities where there are, and I quote, higher birth rate and marriage rates. So as we know, for those communities that tend to be more promiscuous and who aren't having children, expect more potholes where you are.
We need more mass transit in South Dakota and Utah for sure. Yeah.
And the other is Secretary of State Marco Rubio for announcing that he will be skipping the American representation at the G20 summit, which is being hosted by South Africa, based on petulance that apparently they mistreat white people there. And then also because of the fact that they filed the complaint at the International Criminal Courts against the State of Israel for possible genocide and war crimes. And of course, his boss, President Trump, just followed up by announcing sanctions against the ICC. So the fact that the United States is going to not be represented at the G20, bringing it down to being the G19, I think shows not only a certain level of immaturity, but also is going to translate into the rest of the world moving on and beyond the United States geopolitically. So thank you for the schmuckery. And thank you for another week. Again, we could have had this be the month that was because so much happened. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Jason Roe. Thank you, Darci McConnell. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, and with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Have a great week. Have a great weekend, everybody.